Okay, so as you saw in the previous lesson, using bone rolls to set up your bones in edit mode so they will work the way you want them to in pose mode is a pretty straightforward concept. So what we're going to do in this lesson is get a bit technical when it comes to working with bone rolls and bones in general. So the first thing that I want you to do is go ahead and click on the armature and make sure that you are in pose mode over here. And let's go ahead and zoom in, do shift middle mouse button, and we're going to focus in on the feet. And go ahead and do the middle mouse button to rotate. And go ahead and click on this bone. Now I'm going to point out a few things here that are going to be a bit obvious, but it's good to understand what you're looking at inside the 3D view when you are working with bones in pose and in edit mode. So the first thing that you will notice is that when you select a bone, it's going to highlight in blue along with its tail. Now you can see over here that we can't actually see the head for this bone. This is because the tail that belongs to the foot.L is actually covering it. And the reason again for this is because how we've set up these bones, and of course there is a parent-child relationship going on. Now what I want you to see over here is that on this tab, when we enable the axes and names, those two things are going to highlight in white. Okay, now first press the 5 key to go into perspective, and what I want you to do is go ahead and overlap this bone with this bone. So you can just do the middle mouse button until it overlaps, and go ahead and just zoom in a bit. Now you'll notice that we can see the axis that's displayed on the tail on the toe.R and its name. So this means that we can actually click through this bone to select the other bone. Okay, now you'll notice that the axis is being displayed as white and the name is being displayed as white. Now when you're working with bones, it's really important to always visually check over here what bone you've selected, or just look over here. Okay, now go ahead and press the 3 key to go to the right view and press the 5 key to go back into ortho. Go ahead and click on this bone and zoom in. Now you'll notice that when you are in orthographic view and when you are working with bones that are mirrored, meaning that both the .L and the .R are overlapping each other, you'll notice that the bone that we just clicked on, which is in front of us, which is the .L, we can only see the body being highlighted and the tail being highlighted. But the axis is not going to get highlighted in white, but the name is. But of course the name is difficult to see. So if we do the middle mouse button to rotate a bit, you'll see that it's actually white over here. Press the 3 key. Now if you click again, now we've selected the toe.R bone. So you'll see that it's not going to show anything highlighted on the bone, but it will show the axis as highlighted as white. So of course, if you have this off, you always have to visually check over here which bone you've selected. So a quick way to do this in the 3D view is to just have the axis enabled so you know which bone you've actually clicked on. Okay, now if we switch to edit mode and click on this bone, you'll see that it will highlight, well, it's supposed to highlight the head over here, but you'll see it's actually highlighting this whole joint, and this part actually is the tail that belongs to the foot.L. But notice that it's highlighting pretty much the entire bone, right? And of course it's going to behave the same way, where the axis is going to show up as black. Now if we click again, now we've selected the toe.R, and here we can see that the axis is being displayed as white. So what does this mean? So it means that if we zoom out, do shift middle mouse button and take a look at bones that are a little more complicated, like the arm bones, you'll notice that if we click on this bone, we're seeing a bunch of axes over here, right? if you do the middle mouse button, the other axis belongs to the other bone on the other side. Press the 3 key. So here you can see that whenever you see this white axis, this means it's not overlapping the axis on the other side. Because bones, when they are mirrored, can only be rotated, the axis that belongs to the other bone is actually this one over here. Okay, and you can see that the z-axis is showing up as white. I'm sorry, it's showing up as black is because the z-axis belongs to both of the bones. So if you open this up and actually click over here to do the bone roll, you would have to look at the black z-axis if you want to point it this way. So that's something that you want to get used to as to what you're actually seeing inside the 3D view when you are using bone rolls and you are in orthographic view from the right view. Again, this is only when bones are overlapping like this. Okay, now let's go ahead and shift middle mouse button and go over here. So again, when we click on this bone and we go to the bone tab over here, you can see that its parent is foot.l. Now you can click on the tail of this bone. So if you click it, you'll notice that it's selecting right now the toe.r. So we have to click it again to select the tail of the toe.l. Now over here we can click on the body, and if we click over here, right, it's going to select the tail of the foot.r, and if we click over here again, it's selecting the tail of the foot.l. Now this is important is because you can accidentally think that when you've clicked over here, you've selected the head of the toe.l, and which of course is not true, right? Because it's using the connected feature. So if you come in over here and uncheck this, what you've really done is remove the connection between the foot.l and the shin bone. So if you click on the body of this bone, you'll notice that this was the bone that we were really working on. So over here, if we click, we're actually right now clicking on the shin lower.l. And if we click over here again in the center, you'll see now we've clicked on the head of the foot.l. So if I press the G key, you'll see that that's what this is. Now notice that we're actually seeing the bone on the other side move with it, so it looks a bit confusing. Okay, I'm just going to left click over here to do the middle mouse button to show you that that's what that is. Now of course, if you go ahead and click on connected, it'll just snap back. So make sure that you are aware of this concept over here. Okay, so now you'll notice that when we've moved it, of course we have to click over here, press the G key and press the enter key without moving the mouse to make sure that the foot.r mirrors it exactly. And of course, for this to work, you have to be in edit mode on the options, and you have to have the x-axis mirror option enabled. Okay, so now if we click on the body of this bone, we can actually click on the tail of the body. You can see that it's always the toe.l, doesn't matter which one you click. Now go ahead and remove this and go to pose mode. Now if we click on the green arrow, you'll actually see that how small the head really is, right? So the tail is really covering it. Now if we switch to edit mode over here and click on this green arrow and move it, you'll notice that how small the head is for this bone. Okay, meaning that when you have this on connected, see that it's actually highlighting this entire bone with the tail that belongs to the foot.l. So that's just the way it works. So it can cause a bit confusion that you can think that this actually is the head of this bone, which is not. Okay, so now having explained that to you, what I'm going to do now is talk to you about something that has to do with bone rolls. So go ahead and just reload this file, click on the armature, and go ahead and switch to edit mode over here, do shift middle mouse button, and go ahead and zoom in and press the 3 key to go to the right view. So now you know how to work with these bones. Now what I'm going to show you is going to be a bit more advanced concept that has to do with bone rolls. Okay, go ahead and open this up. Now if you click on the body of this bone, I want you to hover your mouse over here on the z-axis, which is the head for this bone, which we cannot see. It's inside. Now notice that over here, the numbers that are being displayed for the head and the tail, what it's actually showing is how far the head and the tail is away from the origin point that belongs to the armature object. So if we hover our mouse over here, do Control C, and then hover our mouse over here, do Control V, what we've done is place the head and the tail to be at the exact z-axis, meaning that they are on a horizontal line over here. Okay, so when you do that, you'll notice that if you click over here and type in 0 and enter, if I do the middle mouse button, notice that the z-axis is right now pointing up. Okay, now if you want the z-axis to point down, over here we would have to click this and type in 180 and press enter, right? Because it's just the opposite axis. Now, the thing to understand about this is that when you are dealing with bones that are so small inside Blender, what's actually going to happen is that if you click over here, there are tiny numbers inside here that we're not getting to see. So to demonstrate this concept, I want you to click on the tail of this bone, press the 3 key, go and zoom in, shift middle mouse button. Now notice that if we click on this blue arrow and just move it up just a little bit like this, it's no longer perfectly horizontal with the head of this bone. Okay, but notice that over here it says the same exact number for the z-axis. Now you'll notice that if we click on the body of this bone, right, where the z is now pointing down, notice what happened to the number. It says 0. Remember, we had changed it to 180 to make it point down. So now it's saying 0 and the z is pointing down. So if we want the z to point up, we now have to type in 180. Okay, but if we hover our mouse over here, do Control C, meaning we're capturing all those tiny numbers, come over here, do Control V, now you'll notice that it says 180. So now when we type in 0, now it's pointing up. Now notice that when you are messing around with the numbers over here, the mirrored bone is not behaving correctly. So this means that if you come in here and mess around with these numbers, you need to make sure that you click on this bone without moving your mouse, press the G key and press the enter key to make sure that that bone takes the settings so it's mirrored correctly. Okay, so why is this behaving this way is basically the question. So what I want you to do is go ahead and press the 1 key, go to the front view, and go ahead and switch to object mode over here, do Shift A and add a circle. Notice that it's only going to add the circle where the 3D cursor is. So here you want to make sure you do Shift C to place the 3D cursor, and then do Shift A and then do a circle. Go ahead and scale this down so it comes like this, okay, and press the G key over here. I'm going to scale it down a bit more, and now I'm going to go over here. So the thing to understand about this, basically you can imagine this to be an infinite plane. We're just representing this plane as a circle. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go to the object tab and click on X-ray so we can see through this. Now what we need to do is, having this object selected, press the Shift key down and actually click on the armature on the outliner, do Control P and set parent to object. So this means that when we click on the armature in object mode, when we press the R key 2 times, this plane is always going to move with it. Okay, now go ahead and click this, press the 3 key. So what I want you to do is press the G key and move this right over here where the head is. So this is basically what's going on. Every bone knows about this plane over here, this infinite plane. And remember, when you click on the armature and press the R key, this infinite plane will always travel with every bone. So if we click on this object and make sure that you can see this tab over here, press the 3 key, do Shift D to duplicate this and put this one right over here on the head of this bone. Now do Shift D, do the same thing over here, do Shift D and do the same thing over here. Press the 1 key to make sure that it's like this. Now do Shift D to place this one here, Shift D to place this one here, Shift D to place this one here. Basically, this will act as the plane for all these three bones. Do Shift D to place this one here, Shift D, Shift D, Shift D for the shoulder on the dot L. Now do Shift D for the arms. Okay? Just like this. That's enough. You get the idea. So this infinite plane is always going to be with the head of these bones. This is an invisible plane. So if you click on this armature and press the R key 2 times, you'll notice that wherever the armature goes, these planes will always travel like this with the head of these bones. Okay? So if we go to edit mode over here, and let's say click on this bone, press the 1 key. Now go ahead and over here we're going to go to the bone tab and just get rid of this parent for a second. Okay, so if we press the G key, it's like this, and click over here and get rid of this. So this is an individual bone. So if we do the same thing over here, hover a mouse, do Control C, go over here, do Control V, and type in 0, you'll notice that it behaves the same exact way. Okay, so I want you to be aware of this concept when it comes to bone rolls, meaning that this is just a bone roll. We can make it anything that we want, but it's good to note that how it behaves when it's perfectly aligned horizontally with the head and its tail. Now you'll notice that if we press the 3 key, go to where the eyes are, if we click over here, you'll notice that it's going to pretty much behave the same way, right? If we type in 0 over here, hover your mouse, do Control C, over here do Control V, it's going to show 0 and the Z is going to be pointing up. I'm going to press the period key on the numpad to home in on this. So because these bones are so small, press the 3 key, right? Maybe you don't like it to work this way, is basically what I'm getting at. Maybe you like it where you want to type in 180 and it points up. So if we click on the tail of this bone and just move it up or down so it's no longer horizontal like this, over here when we have this body selected, we can type in 0, now it's going to point down. Now if you want the Z to point up, you can type in 180. Okay, so this is really the only issue that you have to be aware of when you are working with bones. Okay, so now let's just go ahead and reload this file. Okay, so now you understand how this whole concept works. So we're now ready to go through the actual rigging process. So to do this, we're going to set up the file for the next lesson where we will start this process. So go ahead and go under File, do Open, and go ahead and open the Rigging Lesson 01 f.blend. This is where we had just mirrored the bones. Over here, make sure that this is set on median point, and go ahead and go to the figure, go to the modifiers tab, make sure that on the subdivision this is set on level 1, collapse this and collapse this over here. Do Shift C to place the 3D cursor in the center, Control middle mouse button to just zoom in like this, and over here this should be set on increment, global, and here we're going to click on the armature, go to edit mode, and make sure on options you have X-axis mirror enabled. Go ahead and switch this over here, and now we're going to do File, Save As, and save it as a new file, Rigging Lesson 02 a.blend. See you in the next lesson. Thank you.